tell me again about your first flight. Tell me about your first flight again.
My first flight was
Yeah.
at a Veronica Chief. We went to Compton Airport and bought this wrecked airplane and took it over to our tech school at California Flyers and put all new fabric on it, overhauled the engine, and
How old were you?
hmm?
How old were you?
I was 19.
And what was your rank?
You had a long day today.
What was your rank? Airman, just airman?
No, this when I was a civilian.
Oh, civilian.
Yeah.
I thought you said your
This is-
first flight was in the
No,
Air
this
Force.
is after I got out of the Air Force.
Oh, okay.
Got out of the Air Force and see, I wanted to be a flight engineer, so I had to get a flight engineer certificate
Right.
by the FAA. And so one of the students had an instructor's license for flying. So he, after we got this airplane all rebuilt, we took it down to Compton Airport, and
How did you take it down there? You flew it?
no, it's not too far. So we just trucked it down there.
Oh, you trucked it down
Yeah,
there.
I took the wings off and got down there and put the wings on down there. And he checked us out at the Veronica Chief.
All right.
I
Hi.
took.
How's it going?
I was
Yeah.
just talking to Dad about early days of flying.
And I took my girlfriend up one time. I just had my student license. And
You had your student license and you took your girlfriend for a flight?
Yeah, I
for
took her
a,
up.
for a flight?
In fact, I took off Compton Airport. We flew over the Los Angeles Coliseum,
Wow.
and that was a letdown for LAX. Now all the airplanes come right down over the Coliseum. Of course, in those days, there was about one airplane every 2 hours landing in LAX. So I remember USC was playing Notre Dame at that time, so I wanted to show that the teams down there. So we flew around the Coliseum, and a couple of times circled the Coliseum with all those people down there watching a football game. Came back to Compton Airport and landed.
Was it just the two of you?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that you had you were a student pilot. I thought you were only the flight engineer navigator. I didn't know you actually flew the plane.
Well, I flew.
Hmm.
I hadn't had my license yet. I was just
Right.
a student. And,
Did you get your license ever? Did you ever? Did you get a pilot's license?
no, just student pilot's license. That's all I got.
You didn't go past. You
I didn't go
pass the
past it.
exams or anything.
No, I should have, but
Hmm. Wow. And tell me again why you chose the Air Force over the Navy when you said everybody was choosing the Navy. Before around World War II, everybody around Long Beach.
I guess I didn't like those sailor uniforms.
You didn't like the sailor uniforms.
A little boy with a little white hats on. I just didn't. I don't know what it was. I just wanted to go in the Air Force.
Hmm. And what was your first flight in the Air Force? What was that like?
I was stationed at the first assignment station was Lukefield, Arizona. And Lukefield, Arizona, that's where that was the advanced training base for the Air Force pilots.
Hmm.
They go basic training, then come to advanced training at Luke. And one of the pilots had to take his one aircraft up for a checkout. So he asked me if I wanted to go along. So it was in an AT-6, Advanced Trainer.
Hmm.
So I went up
Hmm.
and,
All right. Anything else you want to?
yeah, all the things interesting things I've
Okay. One story is the time you had a flight to.
to Seattle out of March Air Force Base. There's two pilots and a woman officer. They had to get up to Seattle. And we were at March Field. So they came in the office where a bunch of us old crew members are still waiting around to be let out of the service.
Yeah.
So they asked if there was you couldn't take off in a B-17 unless you had a flight engineer. So this two officers and a woman officer. There's anybody willing to trip to Seattle? So I volunteered. So we took off from March Air Force Base, started flying up to Seattle. I guess this one woman officer had to do something up there, some meeting or something. And we hit a snowstorm in Oregon, and the snowstorm was so bad we just couldn't go any further. So we were getting low on fuel. So we finally found a hole in the clouds because it was snowing like mad, so we were up above that. And so we had to go down, and we found a hole. So we got down. We were just fairly close to Klamath Falls, Oregon. So we got into Klamath Falls, Oregon, and it was just snowing like mad. And so we had to stay there that night. We went in town to the hotel there, and the next day it was still snowing, and I went out to the airport where we landed and tried to sweep off some of the snow on the wings so we could take off, but it was still too bad to take off, so we had to wait the next morning. So the next morning we took off, and we got the snow off the wings and everything, got it fired up, and we finally made it up to Klamath Falls, or up to McChord Air Force Base. I think it's in, if I remember right, in Seattle, Washington. So that was quite an experience.
Yeah. Did you guys flying by instruments then?
Yeah, we couldn't.
So that's why you had to wait for a hole, by sight or by instruments?
In those days, they didn't have much of the way of instruments or anything. You're lucky to get contact with a tower around that was operating with a radio.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we made it in.
Yeah, I think so.
The GI Bill.
All right.
And that was about 1946.
Uh-huh.
That's after the war, yeah. Year after the war.
When he got out of service, he went to work for United up in San Francisco in dispatch.
Yeah.
And so he got a hold of me one time. He said, there's an opening up here in dispatch. So if you want to come up, let's see if we can get you in. So I did that, went up there, and that was, let's see. Yeah, they didn't have flight engineers on the DC-6s at that time. But then the FAA come out and said that anything over 70,000 pounds aircraft, you're going to have a flight engineer. So I was working at dispatch there with Bob Rutherford. We were on a night shift, and and they needed some from flight engineers. So, what was it? Yeah, I had all my groundwork for my flight engineer, all the paperwork and test and everything for the groundwork, but I didn't have a flight check, and you had to have a flight check to be certified. And I couldn't afford to have a DC-6 and take me up in a DC-6 to get a flight check. So what they did up at United, they overhauled the DC-6s up there, and every time they finished an overhaul, they'd have to take a DC-6 up to test it out. So what they did was take us, was about 10 of us flight engineers, and took us up about 4 at a time. And when they tested this aircraft, they had a certified designee FAA guy on board, and he'd give us a flight check. So that's how I got to qualify for the complete flight engineer.
Mm-hmm.
Sitting on the wing of one of the aircraft at LAX, it was called Mines Field at that time. It was somewhere around here. We got a picture of me sitting on the wing, and those 2 or 3 aircraft went around the world and landed at Mines Field there, and we lived not too far from Mines Field. And I remember they set me on the wing and taken my picture. Have you seen that around
I
here?
think so. I think I have seen that. So in 1924, you were 3 years old.
It's about that time. So
Yeah, but